And welcome back to another episode on the LoudMouth MMA Podcast Network. This is another iteration of Last One Standing. This is the first one with me, but this is officially the second episode of Last One Standing on the network. To give a little bit of backstory, if you listened to Last One Standing last week, you got this backstory as well, but I'll give it again. Last One Standing is essentially a spin-off of what was once called Around the Cage and then Between the Links. It's definitely a little bit different, but it's in the vein of that. When it was Between the Links, we had a guest every single week. This time, it is a 4-person panel that is a permanent panel. We're not having rotating people unless someone has to miss a week. The big difference between this and Between the Links is that there was a kind of a 10-9 must system where each round somebody won, then you'd move on. This is a little bit different, so we'll ask 3 questions in a row. There will be no scoring at the end of those 3 questions. Once we get to question 4, I will then seed everybody 1 through 4. 1 will then face off against number 4, and 2 will face off against number 3 in a question. That is, of course, the 4th question, and then the winner of that round goes into the finals, and there you go. It was specifically designed this way for a reason, but I'm not going to explain it. Please check out the rest of the shows on the network. Right now, times are a little slow, obviously, so we don't really have a recap show. We don't have all angles going right now. We don't have the breakdowns for Bellator and UFC going. Those shows do exist, but they're not happening right now. But there are tons of shows on the network. There's some awesome content. I think we have some of the best people in MMA, so please, please, please subscribe to the network wherever you listen to a podcast. So let me go around and introduce the panel. We have... If you've listened to LoudMouth MMA for a long time, this was a voice you heard quite a bit. My former partner in crime, Mr. Sean Ihas. Hello, Sean.
I'm glad to have you back, Kyle. It's been a while since we had some of our very intellectual back and forth that I'm sure people remember from the breakdowns. But those were good times, and like I said, happy to be back and do something different. We talked a little bit last week. I do a lot of DraftKings and betting stuff, but I don't get to do a lot of this type of debate, just general MMA discussion. So it's why this show appeals to me, and I'm really looking forward to it. And Keith gave me the win last week. So now my only mission now is to beat Keith this week, just because he wasn't part of this last week and he got to host.
There it is. We will see what happens. Joining us also, new to the network, but definitely not new to MMA, we have Patrick Auger. Hello, Patrick.
Hey, how's it going?
It's
OJ, actually, but that's all right.
My bad. Yeah, this won't be the first time. This won't be the first time I mess up. Don't worry about it. We'll get to the next one. I'll mess that one up too.
No worries, it happens. But I'm glad to be here. I'm excited. Excited also to beat Keith. That's my main goal. I don't care where else I place as long as I'm able to beat Keith, because he kicked me off last week just out of pure spite, even though I was clearly the best. So here we are.
Can you give us a little bit of backstory? Who do you write for? Who are you writing for currently? What else do you do in the MMA world?
Yeah, so I write for SureDog.com and The Body Lock. Also looking at doing some podcast stuff. I did a fight business podcast a while ago. My main focus is the business side of things. That's kind of my wheelhouse. Kind of like a little John Nash, not quite up to the level of John Nash yet, but getting there. Yeah, that's what I do.
Appreciate it, sir. Also joining us this week, also new to the network, also not new to the scene, we have Riley Kontek.
What's up? I'm planning on doing better than I did last week and actually getting last place as promised.
There you go. All right. No shirt. Apparently this is a theme for you. I was not a part of last show. It's a weird shtick to have, but it's a shtick nonetheless. And if you know anything about me, you know I love shticks. So do your thing, buddy.
Yeah.
Also joining us, a network staple, one of my closest friends in MMA. Hello, Mr. Keith Schillen.
Hey, what's up, man? So I got to correct the record. First of all, what's this like Patrick Auger, OJ, trying to it doesn't matter what his name is. And second to Kyle. Kyle, how does it feel like we're already coming back to the second episode and you've already been voted the worst host in this show's history?
Well, to be fair, I've never claimed to know what I'm doing. So it didn't start now. Okay, let's get going. Again, we have 5 questions. Not all of you will participate in the 5th question, of course, but let's see who's going to. So the first question, we had some news come out today. It began with, I'll give a little bit of backstory on it because it's kind of funny how this came to be, but you had a fake Ariel Helwani account that tweeted that the Habib-Tony fight was on. So Dana White responded to the fake Ariel account saying this is fake news and that Habib can't fight, but that there is a fight card. So it's funny, it took a fake Ariel tweet for us to finally get some answers as to what exactly was going on. So, I'm cool with it. But the takeaway was 249 is supposedly happening. Dana White is now doubling down that this is happening. Completely doubling down. So the question I have for you is, again, 249 has apparently been rebooked with Tony now fighting Justin Gaethje. Will this fight and the card that follows actually happen on April 18th? And does anyone have any guesses as to the location? That has not been released. I don't know if they're going to release it. And I guess that could be an answer. And then if this card happens, are we to assume that UFC is now going to begin as normal? Are we going to see a card the very next week? Are we back in rotation, or is this more of a one-off? So a couple parts of the question, but you got the question beforehand, so you should know. Because I mispronounced his last name, he gets to go first. Patrick, 45 seconds on the clock.
So, yeah, I mean, at this point, they just released the entire UFC 249 card not that long ago. It certainly looks like it's going to happen. I think at this point, I'd give it about 50-50. I mean, we're in an epidemic. It's still 12 days away. That's a long time in this sort of scenario. But I think more and more they're pushing for it. And unless somebody comes in and stops him, unless authorities come in and stop this, they're going to have that card. As to where, there's been some speculation that Tachi's Palace is where it looks like they might be hosting this. That's unconfirmed as of now. I would say no matter if it's not there, it's definitely going to be an Indian reservation.
10 seconds.
Somewhere near Las Vegas, because that's where a lot of fighters have shown pictures of us lately. You got Andrade coming into Vegas, all of that. So I think that's what's going to end up happening. And I think 50-50, but I'd lean yes, actually, at this point.
Mr. Sean Ihaz.
Yeah, I said 10% last week. Screw that other way, 90%. This thing is happening. Dana White is hell-bent on making this thing happen. You look at the fighters who are on the card, it leads you to believe it's going to be in Southern California. Tachi Palace makes sense. Sherdog, I can't remember the exact reporter who put it out first. So sorry about that. Is reporting that's where it's going to take place. And to answer the second part of your question, I think yes. I think we're going to get 2 or 3 weeks in a row all at this same place at Tachi Palace. They're going to start trying to rebook fights, kind of just whatever they can throw together. I think we're going to see a few weeks in a row of fights. Hopefully it's on ESPN Plus. And by the way, this card is stacked. Top of my head, maybe UFC 200. This is the best card I can remember in a long, long time, and I would give this one the edge.
Mr. Riley.
I believe I was the only one last week who said that UFC 249 was going to happen. So I think you guys should all be, singing my praises at this point, because I told you it was going to happen, and it is going to happen. And yes, I do think I agree with Patrick. I do think it'll happen on an Indian reservation, which most of my favorite things happen on Indian reservations, which is usually casino work. So I'm absolutely all for it. And like Sean said, the card's absolutely stacked. It had my favorite fight that got canceled re-added to it in Francis Ngannou and Jair Zinho Rozenstruik. So I am really looking forward to this card, and I agree. I think it's absolutely stacked. And yeah, you'll see a couple of cards happen in the following weeks as well, probably on the same place.
And last but not least, Keith Schilling.
Well, I mean, I'm going to still not be nearly as confident as these guys. I'm still going to put about 25% chance this actually happens. I mean, listen, they announced the card. They haven't announced the location. Now, Sean talked about Jeff Sherwood, the founder of Sherdog, is the one who put it out there. We're 12 days away. We don't have a confirmed location. Now, there's not a state commission that will sanction this. So people talk about Indian grounds. Well, I was in Bellator last month a month ago when it wasn't nearly as bad, and they canceled the Bellator card, which was at Mohegan Sun Indian Reservation. So, listen, we got schools closed down, churches, restaurants, parks, all these things closed down. I mean, right now we have police and fire who are only responding to life and death situations. I mean, they're sending prisoners out of prison right now to try to have social distancing.
10 seconds.
The White House is predicting a peak April 16th, 2 days before it's supposed to be the highest peak in America. Right now, the Prime Minister of the UK is fighting for his freaking life.
All right.
Hold on, no. Hold on. We have six. They're predicting in New York City, just New York City, on April 16th, we'll have 16,000 people die that day. I mean, guys, I'm not a scientist or a doctor or anything like that, but it's absolutely ridiculous to think that this is actually still going to go on. I'm extremely skeptical.
All right, so let's make sure we honor our time
guys,
rules.
First of all, hold on. Last week, I let these guys talk for like 3 minutes each, and they're going to jump on me when I had to listen to that bullshit.
Right, because you suck as a host.
3 weeks. Listen. I'm the only one who's been on the show all thing. It's never been 45 seconds. It's always been a minute and a half. And then you tell me we're going to cut it down to 45 seconds? Has it not always been? I've been doing this show for like 2 years now. It's always been a minute and a half.
That message in chat did exactly what I wanted it to do.
It is. This is fantastic. All right. So
I just want to know is Keith trying out for Hamlet or something? That was the most melodramatic answer I've ever heard in my freaking life.
So let me go around. Part of why we're doing 45 seconds is we're pretty much doing rebuttals each time. So one of the points that wasn't hit very hard that I want to go back around and hit this point a little harder. Do you think if this card happens, obviously if you don't think it happens, feel free to re-explain that. But if you think the fight card happens, I would like a little bit more explanation as to do the cards then continue week in, week out, or is this more of a one-off? Right now to go against a little bit of what Keith said, the WWE is still putting on shows. So it's not like there isn't precedent for a major organization to still be putting something on. There are a lot of people in the octagon. There's a lot of producers. There's a lot of whatever else to make the WWE happen, and they're making it happen. So, in that vein, the UFC could make this happen. Whether they can or not is a whole different story. I'll start with Keith. He's the one that finishes up. We'll work our way backward. Obviously, Keith, you don't think this is going to happen. So, again, you can feel free to reiterate on that and maybe surmise if it were to happen, does that set a precedent for the UFC to continue?
Well, yeah, of course it does. And then all their places would be at the same exact spot. But the problem is as soon as some fighter's relative is sick because of the coronavirus, then they're going to have to shut it down. All of a sudden, Tony Ferguson's grandma gets the coronavirus and dies. Could you imagine the backlash on the UFC if that happens? Now, people are talking about WWE, WWF, what the hell you want to call it, doing this. They also recorded earlier. They're not recording on the 18th, 2 days after the predicted peak by scientists, by doctors. Like I already said, what happens right now as we speak, the head dude of the entire United Kingdom is fighting for his life. If that guy dies, you're telling me that we're going to have sports going on when one of the leaders of the world die of this, and then we're going to tell people to stay in their houses. They're talking about possibly shutting down grocery stores, but we're still going to have sports. I mean, give me a break.
Riley.
I don't know how I follow that nonsense. Well, here's the thing. They will, where there's a will, there's a way. Like we said, if they find one place that's going to sanction these events and allow them to put it out, of course they're going to do it. But also, I expect to see more intense medical procedures leading up to the fights to make sure that fighter health and safety is in order. That's what's going to happen. So, yeah, they are going to continue to keep happening. Dana White, first off, the 249, to go to Keith, what Keith was saying about UFC 249. Dana White and the UFC have already sunk a bunch of money into this card. This card is going to happen. And, okay, it was 10 seconds. This card is going to happen because they've sunk a bunch of money in it. That there's less of an investment in the ESPN Plus card, so those might not happen, but I still think a couple of those will happen in regard.
Patrick?
So, I mean, to a couple things to point out first. So in terms of what Keith said with the Bellator, that card would have gone on had Scott Coker not decided to call it off. It wasn't the commission, it was Scott Coker. So that's a big important point. That's similar to what could very well happen at Tachi's Palace. In terms of the card going on and if it's going to happen, I would say if they do end up hosting 249 at no matter where it is, as everyone said, they're going to do extra cards there. And I think they'll have a little bit more stringent medical tests, but for the most part, I would not be surprised if there are gag orders that or non-disclosures rather that they're having fighters sign for bonuses. And yeah, as you know, Riley pointed out, in terms of this whole thing, there's money sunk into the card and all of that as well, but they need to put on their shows in order to get their contracted media rights revenue, which is needed right now to keep Endeavor afloat, because otherwise Endeavor's in huge trouble. So yes, it's going to happen continually if it happens come April 18th, but 12 days is a long time in the pandemic, so who knows.
I really love that that idea of placing a gag order in order to receive bonuses. That is absolutely something that could very well be happening. That's interesting. Sean.
So I in my initial answer, I said if this happens, we're going to keep seeing cards. Dana White's going to keep putting kind of these hodgepodge fights together, and I think he's going to come up with some really interesting fights, which I'm looking forward to. This is an MMA show. I don't want to talk too much about coronavirus pandemic. I'm in New York. I've been in this blank storm probably longer than anybody in the panel, I think. I'm not sure where everybody lives, so I'm kind of just guessing there. We're actually seeing not the peak. We're at this kind of plateau. We're at the peak now, and we're expected to downswing in some of the news today. So 12 days is a long time. Dana White, I said it last week, it's a free roll. I don't think there's going to be any kind of huge backlash. He's got a chance to gain exposure. He's going for it. He's the only game in town right now. And would I like a little bit of normalcy? Yeah, I really would like to watch some fights. I don't even care if they're bad next week. Just give me some fights.
All right, let's move on to our second question. Listen, that round had a little bit of everything. It had some melodrama. It had some anger. We had some laughs. You know, that's what we want from this show. So I appreciate you guys playing along. So let's assume that Tony Justin is for sure happening here in basically 2 weeks. So I want you to give me your predictions. Who wins? But more so than who wins, I'm interested in, are you going to put an asterisk next to this fight? How legitimate are you going to take the fight regardless of the result, given the circumstances surrounding it? And then also I'd love to hear your answer on, should Tony have taken the fight? So this time we'll start with Riley. Couple part question there, 45 seconds.
Yeah, I think here's the thing. I don't think I should be telling Tony whether he should or should not be taking the fight. If Tony wants to take the fight, that's completely up to him. And I think Tony's is one of those game day fighters that'll fight anybody. In terms of the fight itself, I really like the fight. No, there's not going to be an asterisk next to it. MMA is a crazy sport, and that means if taking a fight on 2 weeks' notice or 2 months' notice, fighters, a lot of them, train to stay ready to fight. So I'm sure Justin Gaethje's, kind of been in the gym working on it and working like he's going to be in a fight himself. In terms of the fight itself, Justin can be wild, but so can Tony. Tony's been caught with his pants down a few times in his fights, and he usually pulls out ahead. But he's been clipped before him, but I don't think he's been hit by somebody as hard as Justin Gaethje. It's a real toss-up fight in my opinion. But just off the fact that Ferguson has been training 5-round championship rounds, I'm going to have to give Tony the edge here.
I like it. Good job being concise, my friend. Let's move up to Sean.
The quick breakdown, 20-second breakdowns. I'm going to lean Tony Ferguson. Two guys who are going to want to push the pace, tons of action. Riley mentioned it. Tony's been training. Justin, as hard as he pushes, he can fade. The problem is Tony can get caught. In the end, I lean towards Tony. I think he'll be a little smarter in the exchanges, which is crazy that I'm saying that about Tony Ferguson. As for the asterisk, there will be if Tony wins. I think this is a no lose for Justin. He's taken this fight on super short notice. If he loses, I don't think there's anything to it. Fight is normal. The problem is if Tony loses, we're going to lose Tony Habib. And that is going to be a travesty. Conor McGregor right now is the biggest Tony Ferguson fan. There won't be enough of an asterisk on this if Tony loses. This is all risk, no reward for Tony, but he's a game day fighter. Should he have taken it business-wise? Probably not. Should he have taken it because of the fighter, the gangster that he is, and the paycheck? Probably. So how do you want to look at it? Career or money?
Let's move on down to Keith.
All right. Well, first of all, I didn't want to talk about Tony. I want to talk about Justin. He's the one that has everything to risk. Listen, if he had a full camp, I would put this at 50-50. But you're taking a fight on 12 days' notice against Tony Ferguson, who is known for having the best cardio in the entire UFC. Yeah, he did some couple rounds with Drew Dober. That's not like in a full camp at Factory X. Now, Gaethje has gassed in the past. He's gassed against Poirier. He gassed against Eddie Alvarez. And now you got to put him against, like, what happens if this fight is in elevation? Who knows? We keep saying it's going to be in California. It could be in Denver for all we know. And this is a 5-round fight. Justin Gaethje in his entire career has never gone 5 full rounds. He's never gone 4 full rounds. And you want to put against Justin. Now, this is what he has to lose. Ara Hawani tweeted out that they were talking about Conor McGregor and Justin Gaethje at International Fight Week. He loses. He might lose that fight. That's the money fight, not Tony Ferguson. He has everything to lose.
Patrick.
So, well, just to piggyback off Keith's point, there is a little bit of risk there for Gaethje, although money fights are kind of ever since the contracts and the way that the new pay-per-view deals worked out. That being said, the one few money fights that you can get is against McGregor. But in terms of Tony versus Gaethje, I think Gaethje is going to be too much for Tony. I think Tony has been very hittable. He likes to exchange. I think that constant pressure is going to get to him. And again, it's kind of a toss-up, and especially coming off 12 days. Who knows how much Gaethje's been training, but I think he gets the job done. I think this is a horrible stylistic matchup for him. In terms of an asterisk, I don't think that's really a deal here unless one of them tests positive for coronavirus after the fight is over. Then you've got a whole, huge issue. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure, you took the fight. That's how it is. In terms of if this was the smart business decision, I'd say yes for both because that interim title being on the line will, and I guarantee Dana's, bent over right now. I am sure they're getting championship money as though they were fighting for the real title. So at least for Tony, he's getting paid pretty much the same he probably would have against Khabib regardless. So maybe more. So I'd say business-wise makes sense.
So for this rebuttal, again, please, everyone, try to stay within the 45 seconds there. You'll hear me say 10 seconds, so just try to wrap it up there. But again, each round we're going to do a 45-second rebuttal where something that wasn't really hit on enough, we'll get a chance to re-explain. So what wasn't talked about a lot was how the actual fight between the two would go down. So I'd like everyone to take a full 45 seconds to really go in on how they think this fight's going to happen. We will start back with Patrick since he finished us up there. Give us your full 45 seconds on how the actual fight's going to go.
I think it's going to be nonstop, pressure from both guys. I think they're going to stand in the ring and trade. I think that Gaethje is just going to continually spam leg kicks and punches, and Ferguson's going to answer each and every one of them back. And as these guys have pointed out, too, I mean, Gaethje can gas. That's definitely something that can happen. But up until Gaethje gasses, I'm pretty sure you're going to see a Rock'em Sock'em Robots fight where either one guy goes down or eventually one of them gasses and then gets knocked out. I can't imagine any other way this fight is going to go. It's going to be constant pressure, constant in your face. My guess is it's going to be pretty much all standing unless somebody gets rocked and then they get taken to the ground. But I don't see a lot of wrestling here. I think it's going to be just, stand and trade. I think it's going to be a banger.
Sean.
Patrick's dead on with this one, how it's going to go down. Tony Ferguson, I don't think he's hit a takedown since 2015. Justin Gaethje, I don't think he's ever got a UFC take. When's the last time he got one? I tried to pull it up quick. I don't think he's ever got a takedown in the UFC. Like, they're going to stand and trade until someone goes to sleep. And while I'm picking Tony Ferguson, my big concern, dude's 35 years old. You add up enough damage over the years. It's not like he's not in wars. Lando Venata can touch him up and drop him, telling me Justin Gaethje can't. I'm still picking Tony Ferguson, but this is a dangerous fight. In the end, I think Gaethje gasses, Ferguson takes over. It's one of those bloody Ferguson wars. The interesting thing is, with no fans, that's going to affect cardio in some way. I
10
still
seconds.
haven't figured out exactly what way yet, because you don't hear the cheering from shots, and you get somebody hurt and that roar to give you that extra bump to go for the finish. I don't know how that's going to play out, but it's going to be a part of this fight.
Very good point. Keith?
Yeah, I mean, guys are talking about constant pressure that Justin Gaethje brings. That's Justin Gaethje with a 8-week, 12-week camp. That's not Justin Gaethje on 12 days. I mean, you think about it, he's pretty much just cutting weight. That's all he's going to do. He's going to just cut weight. Like, he can't even have a camp for this. And people talk about how hittable Tony Ferguson. How hittable is Justin Gaethje? We forget about that. The guy's like the worst defensive fighter in the history of the sport. The difference is Justin Gaethje is a sprinter who slows down. Tony Ferguson is a sprinter that just had this unhuman likeness where he just keeps going. So I'll take Tony Ferguson to other than the first round, that's the only worry about him. After once he gets the second, third round, it's going to be all Tony Ferguson. He's going to stop him probably fourth and fifth round.
There you go, Keith. Mr. Riley, last but not least.
There's not a whole lot left to analyze here. I think most of the guys, covered what I was going to say. What I will say, though, is while we're saying Justin Gaethje is a really good, aggressive fighter and he pushes forward, Tony Ferguson has good counter boxing as well. So, I mean, Gaethje can be pushing forward and throwing a lot of kicks and obviously throwing haymakers, but Tony Ferguson can move backwards and throw counter strikes at the same time. He's also really aggressive and good at offensive striking, too. But yeah, I'm going to tend to take the gas tank in this one. I think he'll weather the early storm from Gaethje, and then he'll turn it on later, and Gaethje won't be able to handle how much he's got coming towards him.
Didn't even need to be clocked. Listen, Riley, you're a true professional with the clock, my friend. All right. Good round. We now have our third and final question of the opening round, so to speak. Again, this is good stuff so far. I'm really enjoying this. Cody Garbrandt just announced that he plans to move down to flyweight. Seemingly he can do it. He did just have an issue where he had to pull out of UFC Columbus before it was canceled because of kidney issues, which kind of adds some question marks in. But he's relatively small, and by his own account, he walks around pretty small as is. He walks around under 145 at any given point. After he's done working out, I guess he said sometimes he's below 140. So cutting to 125 theoretically should be easy enough. So the question is, of course, will he do it? Will Cody Garbrandt fight at flyweight? If he does, how do you think he fares? And give me a first matchup. Is he going right for the title? Does he have to go through some people first? Give that to me. Let's start with Keith for this one.
Well, I'm not foaming at the tits to see Cody Garbrandt at flyweight, but I mean, why not? I mean, the guy's coming off 3 straight losses in the division. Obviously, the big concern is if he's more dehydrated and coming off 3 knockout losses, like with less water in the brain, help that. But let's be honest, he's going down against probably a lesser division, and there's a long line as he stays at bantamweight to get a title. You may figure Jose Aldo's getting the first title shot. Then you got Aljamain and Sterling and Peter Yan, who both deserve a title shot. Then you got, for some reason, Cejudo's calling out Dominic Cruz. TJ Dillashaw announced that he's getting the first title shot when he returns. And then you still got Sandhagen. So there's a whole thing there. Now,
10 seconds.
The thing I'm really concerned about is actually back surgery. He's had back. That's a bigger concern in how that's going to be. But taking on, I would say take on an easier opponent, someone like a Tim Elliott, who's a name based on winning tough and fighting for the title, but a good stylistic matchup for Cody Garbrandt. That's who should not like a top 5 guy.
Now, granted, Keith lost the point for going way over time, but if you're thinking he didn't get a point for using the phrase "foaming at the tits," then you don't know me very well.
Research, brother.
Listen,
do my research, brother.
Then you don't know me very well. So start peppering, start listening to the Not Safe for Work MMA show if you want some extra points. Because if you pepper those phrases in, that's how you got to get points on here. And then just don't go at 30 seconds over the time limit, and you won't lose that point. So
listen, time limit don't. Hey, listen. When you're the king, the time limit don't work for me. Maybe these new guys, that time limit shit works for them. When you've won this show more than anybody in history combined, listen. I don't know if that's true. I'm just making shit up. But.
I generally don't need 27 minutes to explain myself,
listen,
Keith.
We'll get
listen,
to the.
Listen, you should take more time because all your points are not hitting.
All right, let's get to the time limit king himself. We'll go to Riley.
What was the question again? No, I'm kidding. So yeah, he'll definitely take a fight at flyweight. Like Keith said, he's definitely a small bantamweight, and like I said, he's on a losing streak. The bantamweight division might actually be one of the most stacked divisions in the UFC. It's very underrated. And here's the other thing too, and I think Keith kind of touched on this as well. I kind of got lost in his soliloquy. But the flyweight division doesn't have a whole lot of talent, so I don't think Garbrandt would get a title shot right away, obviously, because he is coming off multiple losses. But I mean, it would probably take one win for him to get a title shot, A, because he's a former champion, and B, he's one of the few names the bantamweight division actually has outside of basically the champion, which is Figueroa, whatever he goes by his nickname, and Joseph Benavidez, who just lost. I know they're going to most likely rematch, but. Garbrandt, he gets one win against a guy like Elliott. I agree with Keith. That's a good fight. Then, yeah, he's going to get a title shot.
Mr. Patrick?
So I hesitate to say he'll have a fight at flyweight. I think he's going to try, but I don't know that he's going to make that weight. I think he might come in a little heavy, especially with the kidney issues and things going on that nature. I'm not sure he's going to be able to really cut that, even though he is a smaller bantamweight, as they pointed out. In terms of, how well it'll go for him, also just being more dehydrated in general and going down, some guy that's been knocked out a bunch and has terrible striking defense, yeah, sure, that's going to go super well for him. Like I imagine he's going to be in trouble, especially if he fights someone like Figueiredo or Benavidez. He's going to get his lights knocked out. It seems like a strange idea from my perspective, even though there is a backlog at bantamweight. And then in terms of who he should face, honestly, yeah, flyweight is a little bit deep or a little bit shallow, but there's still some killers in there. I'd like to see him either fight off against Brandon Moreno or Askar Askarov. Those are my two.
Let's move on over to Sean Ihas to finish up the round.
All right, Jack. For all of me, I got to get my extra points. Look, there's no way Cody Garbrandt, to me, with kidney issues and back surgery, I would be really, really surprised if he makes weight. So just my knee-jerk reaction is maybe he fights Ray Borg at catchweight because he can't make weight. Like, no way this guy makes it at 249, just as a side comment. I don't think he's going to get there. Should he, business-wise, for all the reasons we laid out? Yeah, if he can do it, absolutely, you can make more money down there. Better chance to be a champion again. Like, it is a smart business move if he can do it. I hope he doesn't hurt himself trying to do it, but I get what he's thinking. In terms of who he should fight, don't let him fight Tim Elliott, please. It does nothing. You can't get a title shot off of Tim Elliott, and he's a grappler, and we've seen he's an idiot in the cage. He'll go to the ground with Elliott and get submitted. You want to build him up? Give him Kai Kara-France. Let it be a striking match where he's got power, and I think he probably puts Kai down.
I like it. All right. We have reached the end of, the regular season? What are we calling this, Keith? What are we calling the first part?
We're not rebuttal on this round?
No, we don't need to. This is a pretty.
I was gonna smash all three of them.
Listen, we don't need to. This is a pretty basic question. We'll get ourselves into the semifinals. What's the first step called? Why is this word escaping me? You got the semis and you got the finals. What's the first part? The tournament?
Qualifying rounds?
Just the tournament, I guess, right?
Preliminary.
The preliminary, yeah. All right. So the preliminary rounds are done. We're now going to enter the semifinals, and the seeding is as follows: we have Keith at 1. We have Sean at 2. We have Riley at 3. We have Pat at 4. So number 1 is taking on number 4. That is Keith going up against Patrick. And we have number 2 taking on number 3. That is Sean and Riley. So Keith, would you like your group to answer this question first or second?
I don't care if we go first or second, but I want to go second in my matchup.
Okay. So we'll just have you go second in your group as well.
We get more time, right, in the semis?
Yeah, we will move this up to a minute. So it's 45 for the prelims. We got 60 seconds for this, and then again we'll have a 60-second rebuttal as well. So keep that in mind. You don't have to hit every single point. You will get a chance to reiterate some stuff later. So the question for this round. A plea has been struck in the recent John Jones situation. The agreement is as follows. Jones must serve 96 consecutive hours in a essentially house arrest. I believe that is already over with, or will be in a day or something. In addition, he must complete 48 hours of community service. Obviously not right now, but once the world opens back up, pay a $500 fine, and also take part in a 90-day outpatient treatment program. So, the question is very, very simple. What do you think of this punishment? I also would like to ask, do you believe the UFC, much like the NFL, should also impose their own punishment, whether it's stripping, a fine, whatever it is? If they're even able to do that, I don't know. But if they can do that, should they? So we're going to start with Sean. Sean, you got 60 seconds, my friend.
I hate that we're still talking about this. We went over this last week. In terms of the house arrest, before I get into the whole question, what a joke. Now, house arrest, we're all under quarantine. That's great. Send them out in the public for 96 hours. That'd be a better punishment. But do I care? No. I do not care. Am I surprised? No. What do I think of the punishment? Let the courts deal with it. I don't give two flying bleeps. I'm done dealing with this question. Like, let them deal with it. Should the UFC do their own punishment system? That's the question here. And we hit on it last week. No. Why do it? You think this is going to fix people? Look at the NFL and Josh Gordon. No, it's not fixing anybody. MMA is a different beast. It's not a team sport. It's an individual sport. Let the legal system handle it. Until he does something, I'm more concerned about the steroids and the cheating, which we can talk about a whole other, USADA conversation. Do I care he's doing drugs? In terms of the UFC and
10
MMA?
seconds.
No. In terms of society? Yeah, I have a problem with it. Nobody likes drug addicts and people who are disruptive to society. Hate those people. That's not what we're talking about. I'm not here to virtue signal. I'm here to talk friggin' fights. And this isn't part of it.
Riley.
I agree with Sean. First off, the punishment by the law enforcement and the court systems is way too harsh. He should have got off with a slap on the wrist. They actually should have a John Jones Day in Albuquerque, New Mexico for how many great he's bringing attention to a city that nobody likes. Who likes, first off, Albuquerque, but who likes New Mexico? It's like it's terrible. Who goes there? And in terms of should the UFC punish him? No, they should give him a raise. The guy is doing his job. He's getting people to hate him. He's selling pay-per-views. He's the man. The only way the UFC should ever punish a fighter like John Jones is if he does something in a UFC octagon or at a UFC press conference that is against the morals and standards of the company. I could agree with if he sucker punched somebody after a fight, go ahead and suspend him. He did something in his personal life which is stupid and I think kind of cool, but I'm just a John Jones guy. So no, he absolutely should not. And of course our moral overlords in the MMA media are going to say to flog him and hang him in the public square. Just stop it. He's the man. And I'm done with this question also. Thank you, Sean.
Okay. As a man who...
I have a severe problem that we're on video because I'm watching Kyle, our host, eat every bit of that up.
Listen, there's a lot going on there. He took a sarcastic route, so that's interesting. So I'm gonna try to hone him back in for the rebuttal to nail something down for me. A little bit, yeah.
He wasn't sarcastic. You missed last week. That was not sarcastic.
So I will also warn Riley that I lived and my wife was born and raised and my daughter was born right outside New Mexico, about 30 minutes away. So that
explains a lot.
All right. Well, let's move on to now. Sean, you already know you won, Sean. Record? So yeah, go ahead, Keith.
We want listings from everywhere, including Albuquerque. Neil Patrick Harris lives in Albuquerque. John Madden lives in Albuquerque. We'll take any of them to be a guest. If they want to fill in 1 week, we will take those guys. Carry on.
I like it. Good job. Thank you. Can we just do a thing? Can we do a bit every single week where we just list off various celebrities that live in Albuquerque and just have that be a thing that we do? All right. So
Demi Moore lives in New Mexico.
Listen, for the rebuttal, I'm not going to give a prompt for this one. Did you say Demi Moore?
Yeah, she's from New Mexico. I don't know if she lives there.
Okay.
She's from
well, it doesn't matter. Any connection to New Mexico, they'll get a shout out each and every show. I'm not going to give a specific prompt for the rebuttal. Anything that you feel like, if you want to respond directly to what the other person said, or if you just want to go in more on something that you feel like you didn't have enough time on. I don't care. No prompt. Just 60-second, another rebuttal. We'll go with Sean. We'll go back and forth. Sean?
So we really can't rebuttal because we're on the same page here. I have a feeling both the other guys are going to be on the other side of the argument, but just kind of, I want to hone in on the fact that John Jones, in my opinion, is a horrible human being. Horrible. Like, I'm not with Riley. He's not a cool guy. It's why I want to watch him fight, though. I can't wait for John Jones to end up unconscious, and I tune in every time hoping someone's going to knock him the hell out. But in terms of how MMA should be handled, to how I think it's going to grow best and what's best for the sport, why are we dealing with this petty crap? The fact that this is even a semifinal question, a $500 fine, I could pay that. No problem. Like, come on, let's quit talking about this and let's talk about fights. And
humble
it's not
brag.
just MMA. It's what humble brag exactly. It's not what. He totally threw me off here because I was going to make a comment. My shirt costs $500, but it's a $5 T-shirt. Anyway, I don't want to talk about this, and other sports do it too. I think the media gets honed in on just these storylines that take away from sport.
10 seconds.
Sean, in all fairness, what the hell else are we supposed to talk about right now?
Wait, listen, we got nothing else. We got nothing else, buddy. This is it, baby.
Let's talk about potential future matchup that Dana White's going to have to scramble out of, and we're looking out of. Okay, what fighters live in Albuquerque because they're close to Southern California? We can revisit this.
Sean, can I ask you this question before we move on? Do you think Patrick's a terrible person? Because I'm about to knock him out, so you might enjoy that.
Well, I mean, I'm
keep talking, Keith. Just keep talking. That's all right. Just go ahead.
I'm kind of looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to how red your face is going to turn as you're yelling in a minute.
Riley, your 60 seconds, my friend.
I don't need a rebuttal. My answer was perfect.
That has never worked for people in the past. We'll see if it works for you. That has never worked in the past, my friend. All right, I'll give you another chance. Do you want to do a rebuttal?
John Jones 2024.
All right, here we go. All right, let's take on Keith. You said you wanted to go second. So, Mr. Patrick, let's hear it, buddy. 60 seconds.
So when it comes to this, I mean, am I surprised about the, and do I think he should have gotten something worse in terms of from the police? I'd say maybe a little bit harsher because I'm pretty sure, given his, history of incidents, he probably should have at least gotten, more community service, a bigger fine than $500. I mean, good Lord, that's nothing. And yeah, like basically staying in your house during a quarantine. Okay, that doesn't say anything about how that system works. Then, that being said, in terms of should the UFC do anything, I think the UFC should do something. I think they should fine him or rebuke him in some form or fashion, not because it's going to actually change his behavior or, change him to be something and, help him with his problems. It's because, one, if you're trying to be a real legitimate sport, you have to, act like the other sport leagues. You have to say, I have a code of conduct and all of that. You have to do all these things. And two, it just paints him to be a bigger bad guy, which is only going to sell more fights. It's press. You got to do it.
It's a good point. I will also say that something I think people that they don't take into account is the, say, fine against John Jones isn't about changing John Jones as much as it's the guys who can't really afford to mess with it changing their behavior. So it's not necessarily about John. It's about people at the bottom there, which is an interesting concept. Keith, 60 seconds.
So first, I got to correct something that Patrick said wrong. He said the police punishment. The police don't punish. It's the courts that punish. So listen, this is exactly what I expected. It is a misdemeanor for a guy who's not on probation. This wasn't lenient. This is exactly what pretty much everyone gets in that situation. It didn't lead to a car accident, which usually makes it a little stiffer, but not that case. But the biggest reason why it was so lenient, it was a plea deal. Why was it a plea deal? Because the attorney general didn't want this to go to court. Why? Because he's going against a wealthy athlete who can get a very good lawyer, who can understand that the easiest charge to beat is DUIs. It's called, if one thing a police officer does wrong, the entire case is thrown out. It's called the fruit of the poisonous tree. They have to have the exact verbiage while they read him doing his SFSTs and all this stuff.
10 seconds.
I can't speak on New Mexico, but listen, all right, I'll do it in the rebuttal.
I will give you, Keith, I'll give you an immediate rebuttal. We get 60 more seconds, and then we'll move over to Patrick.
Okay, so listen, I can't like. Why is it so lean? Why can they get out of it? They can get out of it because a lawyer and a doctor most likely are not going to beat up their girlfriend, but they might drink too much at a party and drive home. So that's why they make it so these people can get out so easily. I can't speak about New Mexico, but in Rhode Island, it takes 3 police officers, 3 hours of report writing for a DUI, and then you have to have all 3 writers, all 3 guys have everything perfect. You need 1 guy to write a 30-minute report for a murder. Seriously, I'm not joking. You ask any police officer, it's harder to convict someone on a DUI. Now, the one thing I want to spend the rest of my time talking about this. John Jones is a terrible person. You know why? Because DUIs is one of the most dumbest things to get arrested for. You have Uber, you have Lyft. And it's so – listen, it's a misdemeanor, and I think it's terrible. It should be a felon. You could kill people. There's people who die every day. It is terrible.
Seconds.
We shouldn't laugh about it, and everyone jokes. Now, as far as what should the UFC do as a punishment, what can they do? They want to strip him of the title, so when Dominic Reyes wins the title, he calls for John Jones next? Or they want to – people say, like Mike Hack, I love him, but he said cut him. Why, so he can go right to Bellator?
You can't cut John Jones. That's wild. I will also.
Listen, if Mike was still on the team, we would have cut him for saying that dumbass line.
It was exactly. I will say before we get over to Patrick, I do want to piggyback on something that Keith said, because this is something that I've been echoing. I do find DUIs to be probably one of the worst things that you can get outside of literally taking someone's life, because it's pure selfish. There's never a reason to do it. It's incredibly dangerous. I've lost 2 family members. Neither one of them were drunk. They were hit by drunk drivers. So it is one of the worst things that you could possibly do. If you are listening to this and you have a habit of driving drunk, for the love of God, stop doing it. Stop doing it. Take Ubers. Just seriously, it is 2020. It is at your fingertips to get a ride anywhere you want to. I could take an Uber right now to California. I mean, seriously, it is not complicated. All right, let's move up to Patrick.
So, yeah, no, I'm in terms of the, again, the criminal punishment, again, it was what should happen. So, again, I may have misspoke about police versus the courts, but still, my guess is it was more of the ongoing pandemic, happening rather than the attorney general not wanting to fight it. Probably a lot of other things they have to, prioritize. But in terms of what the UFC should do too, they did, put that whole code of conduct thing into place on April 13th. And that discipline may be imposed for misconduct, which includes without limitation the following examples, yada, 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 including DWI, DUI, or any vehicle-related offense. You could do fines. You could do. They have a whole bunch of stuff that they actually put into writing back in 2013 in terms of what they could do. And again, what that does is, as Kyle said, it makes the younger fighters and those that can't pay those fines a little bit more in line. But it also sends a message of hey, we are taking this seriously. We are, a big boy league. We care about the perception and the brand name and all of that. And that's something that UFC has shied away from to be, that's why we're having fights, in a pandemic. So it's one of those things. If they ever want to get to that next level, they're going to have to implement that type of, punishment, that type of conduct eventually. It's just a matter of time.
I'd like to do a 5-second rebuttal for everybody, because I'm just genuinely interested in what you think. So just super, super, super quick answer. Keith, I'll start with you. Do you think they should have deferred house arrest till after the quarantine was over?
No, you can't. You can't. You pled guilty now. You can't.
I mean, you could defer it. You could defer punishment. Like you could say you could give you 30. I could give you 30 days jail deferred for 90 days, and then after 90 days you report to jail.
Not if they choose to do it right then. No, you can't.
Well,
No, you can't do that. You can't. Someone, and just to go off of Patrick, he said it had to do with the pandemic. It has nothing to do with pandemic. The chances, because usually on a DUI case, you're probably not going to go to court for 6 months anyways. That's why they plead right at arraignment. Listen, Patrick, I love you, brother. You're really good at this, but unfortunately, you went against a police officer and the law question. Sorry, brother. Honestly, the honorable thing to do is like, when you're playing chess and you lost, just lay it on the king. Just X out now, brother.
All right. If that was an option to defer, I guess whatever. I'll ask Keith. Keith, I trust your opinion, of course. So I thought, I know you could defer jail time. I wasn't sure on a plea. I guess a plea is a little different. So that would make sense.
Even deferred jail time is a weird situation. It doesn't happen often, and when it does, it's usually a child custody type thing. It's not. They don't defer to punish the person. They actually defer to actually help them out.
Well, sure.
It's just like your wife is in the army and she's deployed and she has to come back. It's one of those kind of things.
We're going to defer until wife's mother gets back. Yeah, I get it. It just like, it is bizarre, and I think people are taking issue with that piece of it, which is totally understandable. The problem is it was just dumb luck. It's just how it works. It's dumb luck.
And guys, everyone has it wrong. It was only a 4-day house arrest anyways.
96 days or 96 hours.
No. It was 96 hours.
Yeah.
The other one was outpatient treatment.
90 days.
Which is not the same.
Yeah, it's a 90-day outpatient thing.
Yeah, but so people keep saying, oh, he's got 90-something days. No, that's only 4 days. So really, he had 4 days in house arrest. Okay.
Which is nothing.
I would just like to point out that, Keith said it wasn't because of the pandemic, but sometimes, Keith, if something is scheduled for 6 months out and then a bunch of stuff scheduled in between gets ruined or pushed back because of a large-scale global health crisis, it causes an impact, and then that 6-month thing won't happen on time. So just so you know, it has nothing to do about you, knowing the law and any of that. Like, it's more of it's a thing called schedule.
Listen, that's the Patrick. That's the Patrick we need each and every question. Channel that.
It had to do with the Attorney General knowing that the officers did not have observation of motion, which is your first observation in DUI, which they did not have, by the way. Because when they pulled up, he was sitting in a car. It wasn't moving, so right away you can't have observation of movement. So right away, that's the fruit of the poisonous tree. This is like law school 101, and then he could have got off. And
Sean, I'll give you a couple seconds to answer.
God, I'm going to help all of our listeners and just simplify this to 5 freaking words. 5, not 5 seconds. 5 words. I miss talking about MMA.
Riley,
what Sean said.
I like it. All right. So normally we won't go on a tangent after a question. Maybe we'll. Maybe that's going to be our shtick. Each 4th question, we have a little kind of round table for 5 minutes. I don't know. We'll see. This is my show. Do whatever I want. All right. So we're going into the finals here. The persons going into the finals we have Mr. Keith Schillen. Patrick, I appreciate you. That was a very tough question to get at the end. I do like
You didn't answer the second part of the question in the original question.
Listen, I like.
This is ridiculous.
I like the anger.
Answer.
What was the question?
Don't go on a tangent. Don't get on a tangent. We got to keep moving forward. Patrick, I like the anger and the vigor. I hope that this gets brought into the next show because I love it, and it'll make it that much better. You were awesome. Feel free to stick around if you want. Just stay on mute. You're more than welcome to leave the call. It's not a big deal. It's up to you. And then going into the finals as well is Sean Ihaz. Riley, I did love your sarcasm, my friend. It almost worked, but I'll go with Sean. I think he more properly answered the question.
You know what? I'm one that takes risks, and I went for it.
You did,
so
and I loved it.
That. And by the way, anytime you give me a John Jones question, it's going to be the same thing every time.
Okay, so I'll make sure each week, if I want to keep you out of the finals, I'll just make question number 4 a John Jones question. How about that?
You won't have to keep me out of the finals. I keep myself out of the finals.
All right, I like your style. Riley, you're awesome.
Kyle, you're on mute.
Oh, shit. I've been talking that whole time on mute.
Oof.
All right.
I I thought I kicked something.
How did
No.
how did me and Sean get eliminated when the host just muted himself? How is this a thing?
Oh, jeez, Pete.
I'm still in. just to
Listen, I'm
clarify.
doing.
But I waited to come to your aid till after Kyle said I was in, so he couldn't stick one in my back. But I think you got screwed.
I
Stop it! I was literally pulling up lore. Like
That's my
stop
point.
it.
That's exactly my
got
point. I don't.
smoked.
I'm gonna leave the call. I've been prepping this all wrong. I'll make sure to yell a lot more and say things that don't make sense and only answer part of the question.
I love this.
I'll see you guys
soon. So I'm going to listen to that last thing you said on the last question there before I go. So
I love. Patrick is going to be fantastic on the show. What's going to happen with Patrick?
Hey, maybe going forward because he wasn't fantastic tonight. That's for damn sure.
Listen.
Hey, Patrick, listen. What happened is you called out the king in your intro, and you just got whooped.
All right. So with
Please let me win this, God. Please.
listen with Patrick, I think it's kind of it's the Bane, right? Bane. You know, Bane was born into darkness, right? And he merely adapted. I think. Patrick, that could be that being born in darkness for me. So I think he might I think moving forward, Patrick is going to be a force to be reckoned with because I think he's now going to be angry. So I like it. I'm really looking forward to the show moving forward. All right. What I was starting to say when my mic was on mute was I want to give a shout out to the rest of the shows on the network. I had kind of mentioned that we had some shows that weren't currently going because of the pandemic. I didn't mention the shows we have going, so I want to go talk about those real quick. We have a new show on the network called Sparring Sessions. Please go check that out. We have a show called Open Mat. Please go check that out as well. We have the Not Safe for Work MMA show. We also have MMA Takeover with our very own Keith Schillen here. What else we got, Keith? Anything besides those four? What else we got? Oh, we have Euro. We have the Euro MMA Maniacs. I don't know how do you pronounce it, but Euro Maniacs spelled with MMA. Yeah, it's a good.
It needs to work. It needs to work.
It's cheeky. It's all right. Is that it? Is that the shows we have going currently? I'm pretty sure.
Me and Sean were talking shit to each other. In the
You
chat,
were,
so
yes.
We weren't really listening.
You were. All right. Your fifth and final question. These are the finals. Congratulations to you two for making it here. Sean and Riley were super close. I didn't think that Patrick and Keith were all that close, but I guess whatever, it is what it is. But Sean and Riley were actually pretty close. I know Riley was being sarcastic, but it was still a good answer, even if you cut through the sarcasm. All right. So during this time of quarantine, I want you guys to pick one fight that every single UFC fan needs to either rewatch or maybe watch for the first time. So you can pick something from the days of old. You can pick something recent. I don't care. Pick one fight that every single UFC fan needs to watch. You get 45 seconds for the first prelims. You get 60 seconds for the semis. You get 90 seconds for the final round. There will also be a rebuttal here. I don't know if it'll be 90 seconds or not, but we only get the one rebuttal. I don't want to go back and forth, so try to be concise. 90 seconds. Keith has elected Sean go first. So, Sean, give me that one fight.
All right, so I wanted to find something not brand new. You can't go Joanna and Whaley. We just saw that, but something that a lot of people haven't seen or rewatch. What do people love? They love heavyweights. They love blood. Let's do both of them. Let's do Mark Hunt, Antonio Bigfoot Silva 1, 2011 in Brisbane. You got Bigfoot winning the first couple rounds, and then he drops Hunt in the first round. Hunt comes back, drops him in the third, and then they just go insane for the final 10 minutes. Heavyweights, they made it all 5 rounds. Ends up, I won't give away the decision. I don't want to play spoiler, but man, I've watched that fight a couple times, just kind of scrolling around. And I watched it last week, and I forgot how good it was. Go watch it again. It's something you haven't seen in a while. And 2 guys who are not around anymore. I mean, Mark Hunt, is he officially retired? I don't even actually know the answer to that, and I probably should in this ramble, but you're not seeing peak Mark Hunt. You're not seeing peak Bigfoot Silva anymore. Go and remind yourself if you've already seen it, and if you haven't, go watch some heavyweight spray blood everywhere.
Mr. Keith Schillen.
Well, I'm going to go with the fight that is the consensus greatest fight in female history. Listen, July 14th, 1995, I became an MMA fan. Since that day till now, I've never seen a better fight than Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Weili Zhang. That fight went all 5 rounds. All 5 rounds. Every single round is candidate for round of the year. They put on the most incredible pace in the history of fights. They landed 351 total strikes. You want to compare that to all-time great fights? Jones Gustafsson landed 244. Lawler McDonald 2, 156. Henderson Shogun 1, 172. If you can't do the math, Joanna Jędrzejczyk landed more strikes herself in a loss than Lawler and McDonald did combined. This fight landed more strikes than Lawler and McDonald 2 and Henderson Shogun 1 did combined. And this wasn't a slop affair like Silver and Hunt where they're both gassed and throwing him. These girls kept the most insane pace at the greatest technique. And listen, we're not talking about people with a 9-12 record and a 13-14 record. We're talking about 2 of the best in the world that might rematch very soon, and then you can have it inside. You can break down. You can take round by round. You can break it down. This is supposed to be the fight you're going to watch over and over again. Well, why watch a bunch of guys who retired? How about have some insight on their rematch? Listen, if you want damage, you want his head. It is the best fight. I challenge anybody to find a fight where it doesn't. I challenge anybody to find an all-time war that doesn't get sloppy as the rounds go on, other than this one.
Mr. Sean, you had addressed this fight in your initial answer, so here you go. He gave it to you, so go ahead and give your reason why that isn't the fight, and show some more support for your answer.
Who gives a shit? I just saw this fight, and it was great, and I'll rewatch it again. We're in lockdown. I got time. Let me go and remind myself of some great fights. And to go into your point, I don't really care if it gets sloppy. MMA is fun. I want to watch fun fights, and I get to scroll through and pick out fun fights. Even if they're sloppy, I don't care if they're for a title. I want to see crazy shit. I'd rather go watch Polo Reyes Dong Hyun Ma than rewatch Weili Zhang and Joanna. And that was a great fight. I'll get to see it again soon. Let me remind myself. Let me draw in some new fans. We just saw this, Keith. Rewatch it when the rematch is close and we got to break down lines. We can talk DraftKings. I'll rewatch the fight then. But right now we got all this free time. Let's watch heavyweights go to blows. Let's watch people get sloppy. Let's back off, some of the high horse MMA stuff, and let's just have fun. Whole point of this episode, I want fun in MMA.
Keith.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see guys looking at each other for about half the fight, that's exactly what happened, not 351 total strikes. Now, you're saying that you want fun fights. Weili Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk wasn't fun? They landed 351 strikes. Now, you say you want to bring in new fans? How about bringing fans of your champion in the biggest, most populated country in the world? What's going to bring in more fans? Antonio Bigfoot Silva that loses, he has brain damage and loses every other weekend, and Mark Hunt, who's on a 4-fight losing streak, or the girl that's could be the face of women's MMA right now. It could actually be, based on the population of China, become the biggest star in the sport. But let's talk about this. Do we remember how Antonio Silva and Mark Hunt? How about this? Sit down, watch a fight that happened 7 years ago. Sit down and watch it. Yeah, it'll be fun. And then you'll find out it was a freaking draw. You spent 25 minutes to see a draw. At least this one actually had a winner. At least we actually had a winner, and they're relevant now. You can be like, oh, hey, I never watched MMA. Let me get into MMA. Oh, wait, this Antonio Silva guy that I just became a fan of hasn't won a fight in 6 years. Oh, this Mark Hunt guy hasn't won a fight in 4 years. Oh, I could get excited about the girl who's an absolute superstar right now. That's who I should get excited for. And then I sit down and I get, after all that, my one MMA fight I want to watch is a draw. Great.
All right, he went over, so I'm doing a quick fight.
Well, hold on. I'm gonna kick it back to you. So okay, Keith, don't go over time because that was 30 seconds. But so the vein of the question isn't about relevancy to now. I think you guys are arguing a different point. So I'm going to put you guys on the same point and do kind of one more rebuttal. So let me bring you to the same point. Relevancy has nothing to do with it as far as it is now. So again, going back and rewatching a fight off of UFC 10 would obviously not have any quote-unquote relevancy to now, but that doesn't mean telling someone to go back and watch a fight that led to X isn't something that you would do. So make sure we're on the same page. It doesn't have to be go back and watch a fight that is going to keep fans around or gain more fans or whatever it is. So I'll go with Sean real quick, and then I'll go over to you, Keith. But I want to make sure we're arguing the same point.
Yeah. So what fight is more fun to me? The heavyweights. The heavyweights are more fun, and like I think most people would agree with me. Not that fight was not fantastic. It is absolutely one of the best fights I've ever seen. It's also, and I think it's important when you're recommending to people, hey, go watch this fight, something they've just watched. Like like I'd rather go watch something I haven't seen in a while, and get big heavyweights thrown at each other, and just to chop down your most strikes ever. They had 5 rounds. That Dung Hyun, the other fight I referenced, by the way, Polo Reyes. I know it's not the fight we're talking about, but that fight had more significant strikes landed per minute than your fight. It had about 220 in under 3 rounds. The two girls had 330 in 5. My guys threw more. It's a whole different fight we didn't even talk about.
Cool. So he's like, listen, we're just gonna add like other fights. I can just start naming all-time great fights too if we want. Let's go watch Chandler.
One more.
Let's watch
Significant
Chandler.
strike doesn't matter to me is the whole point. I want 2 guys drop back and forth. My guys are getting dropped.
Cool. What I want is world champions, not people with losing records. And Polo Reyes, who's not even the UFC, he's talking about a prelim fight. Like, I mean, right? He's talking about a prelim fight that was buried. Yeah. So you want a fan like tune into this prelim fight and then go, oh, whatever happened to Polo Reyes? Oh, I don't know. He's cut. He's not in the UFC anymore. Hey, whatever happened to Antonio Silva? Oh, he's cut. He's not in the UFC anymore. Same with Mark Hunt. Like, I'm actually talking.
Those aren't all-time greats.
Huh? Mark
greats.
Mark Hunt, 13 and 14 is all-time great. Antonio Silva is an all-time great.
In the context of their era.
Okay. No. No, you know who's an all-time great? Ioana Jędrzejczyk is an all-time great. How many title defenses she had?
In 10 years, the strawweight champion then would whoop her ass.
Yeah, so guess what? That's a terrible argument because Stipe Miocic could take out a prime Mark Hunt.
It's the same thing you're saying about Mark Hunt.
No, but all-time grand scale. Who has a bigger legacy? Ioana Jędrzejczyk or you 2 fat heavyweights combined?
All right, so
come on.
The argument we're having right now, while a good argument, has absolutely nothing to do with the question. So I will not be scoring. I will not be scoring this piece of it.
I brought stats. He brought nothing. He said, "Oh."
Well, but I will say real quick, if we were arguing the last point, Keith would have lost because I feel like you win against yourself there. Like you're calling Ioana all-time great. How many fights has she lost here recently? Umpteen in a row. When you're looking back,
Kyle, 1 in a row.
Okay, 1 in a row. Sorry. Give me the whole picture. In her last 5, how many has she lost?
Yeah. She lost to Valentina Shevchenko, probably the best female fighter.
Okay, your point.
Pound for pound.
Yeah.
She lost to Rose Namajunas, champion.
Twice in a row.
She lost to Weili Zhang that a lot of people thought she won.
Yeah.
So a lot of people believe that she could be the champion right now.
When how long ago was Mark Hunt Antonio Silva? Was it 2011?
Sure.
Okay, so in 2029, you really think you're going to look back and go, Ioana was an all-time great? Or are you going to be making the same argument you're making now? She lost.
Wait.
She lost 4 of her last 5. She was this.
You're telling me
9 years down the road.
Hold on a second. You're telling me Ioana Jędrzejczyk is not going to look like how many title defenses did she have? Of course she will be. Yeah, Tito Ortiz in the big loser streak. We don't look back at Tito as one of the all-time greats. Matt Hughes ended his career in a loser streak. We don't look at Matt Hughes as an all-time great. Mark Hunt and Antonio Silva was never all-time greats.
I'm not saying they were. I think we're going to be making the same argument in 9 years about how shallow the division was, how whatever. It's going to be the same arguments here in 9 years when it comes to her. But anyway, this is not how the show should go. So we should not be having random arguments about things that have nothing to do with anything. We need to try to hone this in as we move forward. It's my first episode on the show. I'm also having fun. I miss debating. I miss whatever. All right. So the winner of this episode, I don't like picking winners, but you got to do what you got to do. The winner of this one is going to be Keith. Sean, you gave it a valiant effort.
Here, I want you to answer this question for me.
Go ahead.
Would you rather watch you could turn that big TV behind you, or would you watch Hunt and Silva or something you just watched a few weeks ago? Which would you turn around and watch?
If you put it that way, I would rather watch I would rather watch an older fight. I don't think I would pick that one, but in the context of the question, like, I would rather have somebody say, "Hey, if you've never seen this fight off of UFC 75, you should go back and watch it." Like, I think that's the kind of suggestion that I would want. Or have you ever seen UFC 100? Like, I don't know if you've seen that or not. If you haven't, you should go back and at least watch this fight. You know, like, I would want something like that to be the answer for me personally. But one of the things you talked about, I think the reason why I'm not giving you the win is you both in your rebuttal and your normal answer, you went on how fun that fight was, and that was kind of a big part of your explanation. The problem is, the Joanna fight and the Weili fight is significantly more fun. I mean, like, significantly. So it's like, in every metric.
Friendly, this is allowed, kid. I was just a friendly agree to disagree.
Well, sure, and that's fine. To me, it's like in every. Hold on, Keith. Keith, you be quiet. You be quiet. Keith, you be quiet.
Man, Patrick was so robbed. I can't believe it.
Keith, you be quiet. Keith, you be quiet. Let me finish. In every metric, I just want to make my last point. Sean, you did fantastic, by the way. I'm super glad you're on this.
The pot a little.
Yeah, I'm glad you're on this. But in every metric that we use to measure how good something is, like how good of a fight, like it's punches, it's activity, it's pressure, it's lack of takedowns, because takedowns aren't all that fun to watch. Like
knockdowns.
Well, sure, knockdowns are fun too, but that's also one metric in 7 metrics, and the Weili Joanna fight had 7 of 8, you know what I mean, or whatever the number is. So as far as the metrics we use to measure something being fun, like, that has pretty much everything. But Sean, again, thank you very much. Keith, whatever you want to say, the time is yours, and then we'll get out of here.
Well, first of all, I want to say is, listen, I appreciate Sean and Patrick calling me out, but man, that was the worst decision since Don Lewis met Carol Baskins. Listen, guys, you beat up on each other, get a couple, beat those guys, then you come after the champ. But hey, guys, going back to the DUI thing, guys, don't be shitbags, don't do DUIs. And most of all, guys, while we have this break, and it sucks that people are dying, enjoy the time with your family, enjoy time catching up on things. I know, for one, I'm kind of getting rejuvenated, not having to write about MMA and different things. I'm kind of getting refreshed. So, there is a positive to having, being stuck at home. So just focus on some of the positive.
I appreciate that, Keith.
I can't be mad at him.
I know, right? He does that. He has a way of tugging a hold of those heartstrings, Sean, again, I'm really glad to have you on the panel. I'm super excited to see Patrick moving forward. I think he's going to be a blast. I think he just got super, super angry, and I didn't know anything about Riley. I'll try to pronounce Patrick's name. I still don't know how to pronounce it, FYI. So I'll need to figure that out between this week and next week. But
I love Riley's role, by the way. I love the whole shtick.
Yeah, I'm digging it. I'm excited about the show. We'll get out of here. This is going on too long. But we'll try to keep these 15 or 12 minutes less next week. So we'll see what we can do. We had a lot of random arguments that we can get rid of. So, all right, guys, thank you again for tuning in. We'll see you next week.